All right, in this video, we'll be looking at perception and this idea of what it means to perceive something. So yesterday, in the last video, we talked about reception and then circuit level processing, just sending that message to the brain essentially. And then now we're going to look at what the brain does with that. And perception at its basic idea is just interpretation of sensory input. All right. And the interpretation of that sensory input depends on which part of the brain that it goes to. All right. So if you, for instance, if you are looking at something, that is going to the part of the brain that senses light and deals with light. It's not going to that as touch. When you look at, say, a dog, you see a dog, you don't smell the dog, if that makes sense. And so certain parts of the brain deal with certain kinds of sensation, and that sensation is perceived by the brain as a particular thing. Now, didn't really find a good picture for this, so this will help me to talk about this list here. And so these are some aspects of sensory perception. First of all, just general detection. You have to have the ability to detect the stimulus. This requires that creative potential causing an action potential and moving to the brain, which we talked about. There are different ways to perceive things, and that's what you're going to see with these next 5 things. Magnitude is one of them. How do we perceive magnitude, and what is magnitude? This is like intensity. So when you hear a sound, why do you hear sound louder than another sound? What's the difference between whispering and yelling? As far as your brain is concerned, your brain has to know how to do that. So that's one way that we perceive things. Spatial discrimination is another one. This is identifying like the sight of something and looking at it and telling where it is in relationship to other things. We don't think about this, but our brain is having to make these things work. When you hear a sound, you can generally tell which direction it's coming from. How do you do that? Well, the brain has to work those things out. All right. Feature abstraction. This is one of the most difficult, I think, to understand. And this is there's identification of more complex aspects of the way we perceive things. And so, you think about if you see a dog, then you have your brain sees it and you think, oh, I used to have a dog like that. And then you have these memories so there's all these other things that are going on according to that perception, and it arises all this other sort of, memories and emotions and all this. So that is how your brain perceives that particular stimulus. It may even cause you to have an emotive response when you hear something or smell something. So you get the idea there. Quality discrimination. This has to do with, say you're drinking sweet tea and you think, wow, that's really sweet. Well, how do you know something is more sweet than something else? Why isn't something just sweet or not sweet? Well, because our brains perceive the amount of something, the quality of it, how sour something is or whatever. And then lastly is pattern recognition. When we hear music, it's a great example. When you hear music, there used to be this old television show called Name That Tune, and people would see how many tune or notes they could name a tune in, and 3 or 4 notes. It was pretty impressive. And then, you'd have every once in a while someone said, I can name that in 2 notes, and you just couldn't do it. There's just not enough pattern there. You have to be able to hear the pattern, and then your brain all of a sudden puts the rest of it together. We make patterns in our vision and hearing and touch and everything that we do. So this is the way that we perceive things. And again, understanding perception to be interpretation of what you see, hear, taste, smell, touch is the difference. And I walk into my classroom and I see that my desks are arranged differently. That is not benign information. I have to think, why are they arranged differently? Who would do this? There's all this perception that has to that my brain gets concerned with as well. All right. Pain is something that we deal with quite a bit, and understanding the perception of pain is very important. Pain is a warning to our bodies and a warning to us, our minds, to, if there's some sort of damage that's being done, we need to take protective measures in order to deal with that damage. And so typically pain is perceived because of like a temperature change or acid change in the body, pressure change. There could be some other chemicals that are released, and the body does this on purpose in order to alert you. We have inflammation, we have like an inflammatory response, so like a histamine release, and it causes a person, to swell up. So the body's saying, hey, pay attention to this. It's important. And there's certain kinds of neurotransmitters that do this. We talked about the neurotransmitter in the last unit with that substance P. It's a great example of a neurotransmitter that the brain can perceive as pain. Those pain responses can be blocked by other neurotransmitters or things that we can take, like medicines and that sort of thing. There's two ideas with pain. There is pain tolerance and then pain threshold. These are not the same things. Threshold is how much does it take before you start to perceive pain. So if someone touches you on the, this just says a tap on the shoulder, well, do you perceive that as pain? Do you perceive that as nothing? And that would be your pain threshold. When do you start noticing pain? And then there's pain tolerance, which is just your ability to tolerate pain, your ability to like deal with it in, mentally or whatever that is. Two completely different things. And a lot of this honestly has to do with genetics. It's not, you're not some tough guy if you can just deal with pain, but a lot of it just has to do with, particularly pain threshold has to do a lot with genetics. Pain tolerance is more of a mental type of thing. But, some people are more sensitive to pain, meaning they have a lower pain threshold, not necessarily a lower pain tolerance. All right, so that's important. And these two words are important in our understanding of pain medication and treatment for pain, because some people may not have a problem with it, but other people need medication. So there's a lot of understanding there and a lot of ongoing research. All right, so there's a couple of kinds of pain I want to refer to here. There's visceral pain, and visceral pain is like pain that we feel on our insides. Most of the inside of our body has pain receptors as well. I think the only part of our body that doesn't have pain receptors is our brain. And you think, well, what's a headache? And a headache is just those external structures feeling pain. And a lot of times when we have these visceral kinds of pains, we don't necessarily feel them where those areas are. You have them, that pain is referred to another area. And this kind of shows you that, I don't really understand this altogether, but apparently if you have liver pain, you will feel it on the right side of your body where your liver is located, but apparently you might feel it on the right side of your neck as well. Just don't look at this and think, oh no, my pancreas is dying or something like that. That's not the way to do this. I just think the body has a way to deal with pain and refer that pain so that, and this is just what scientists have discovered over the years. You've heard of people when they have a heart attack, their left arm hurts. Well, that is a referred pain. Your heart will have pain too, but the left arm can go numb or be in pain because of that. Now, pain, another interesting thing about pain is sometimes people can have like phantom pain. This would be like an imbalance. It's because of an amputation or something like that. There can be phantom pain where you feel pain in the hand that you don't have anymore. And apparently that is a thing. Another pain that is a lot more common is called chronic pain. And you've probably heard this word chronic. Chronic is something, when you move into a chronic stage of an illness, it is something that the body is always going to have at some level or not. And a lot of time it has nothing to do with there being an actual malady. And so like chronic pain what that is if you've had pain, if you've dealt with pain for a long enough period of time, your body gets used to receiving that and almost has adapted to that and learned that. And that actually happens in your spinal cord. And so that's why pain management is so important. It's not, you're not a tough guy because you're able to deal with pain. You're smart in going and having and dealing with that, because if you don't, the body will transition to this chronic pain stage, which is not a good thing at all. And so proper pain management is important. Obviously, taking pain medication is you have to be careful with it because it can be dangerous. But as long as you're dealing with a physician, it should be fine. But I just think that is an important distinction with pain. You know, if you have an issue that is pain, that you're dealing with pain for a longer period of time, this idea of chronic pain is very important to understand, because you can transition to that pretty quickly.